Okay, folks, you're all very welcome to the launch of the virtual launch of We Are the Walrus, Pete Mullineaux's fifth book of poems, just published by Salmon Press, and with a very striking cover, which you can see from the cover and from the backdrop behind me. And we're very delighted here in Charlie Byrne's to be launching Pete's book. Pete's an old customer of ours, an old friend of ours, and we're very happy to facilitate the launch of this book of poems. This eagerly awaited book of poems. And the book is going to be formally launched by Catherine Ann Cullen, who was born in Drogheda, County Louth, and who has an MPhil in creative writing from Trinity College and a PhD from Middlesex University in London. Her work has won a Gold Award for Poetry and Folklore from the American Parenting Products Association. In 2018, she was a recipient of a Patrick and Catherine Kavanagh Fellowship for her work, and she is part of the Irish Poetry Reading Archive at University College Dublin. Her work has been included in many anthologies and has been broadcast on RTE. Catherine Ann has worked as a lecturer in journalism and a radio producer based in Dublin. She was made an inaugural poet in 2019 at the Poetry Ireland, the poet in residence at Poetry Ireland for 2 years. So please welcome Catherine Ann Cullen, who will speak a little bit about We Are the Walrus. Catherine Ann.
Thank you so much, Vinny. I wasn't expecting such a long introduction. Thanks so much. Well, look, what can I say? This is an absolutely beautiful book. I'm truly honoured to be here this evening to help to launch We Are the Walrus on what I'm sure will be an easy and warm passage into the Irish and the international consciousness. Pete Mullineaux and I have a special bond, I think, in poetry. We featured in the Poetry Ireland introduction series together. And all I can say is it was several moons ago. I can't even remember what it was. There's something about doing your first, I think, officially sanctioned reading of poetry together. I think it means you have a heightened awareness of each other's work and you keep a friendly eye on one another and maybe are conscious of the links between your poetry as well. And so one of the links that Pete and I have in common is an interest in music. So I'm going to start with that. And it's easy to start with that because the title of the book and the title poem has a musical echo of the Beatles, or properly John Lennon's I Am the Walrus, which in turn was partly inspired by Lewis Carroll's The Walrus and the Carpenter. Both of these, I think, are present in Pete's poem. And both of those are humorous kind of pieces of work. And the song has been described as a nonsense song. So here Pete keeps a strong vein of humor, but there's absolutely no nonsense about Pete's poem. The poem combines two strong themes of the book, which are music and the ecological kind of awareness theme. Pete focuses on the we are all together part, I think, of Lennon's song, and he takes us on his own or the walrus's magical mystery tour in a stunning poem about the walrus pup who charmed us by washing up on our shores a year or two ago. The creature's magical journey back home, where it can share its stories, is told both with humour about its rock star status, including the pun on rock, and with kind of a wistfulness, because unlike Carroll's poem, where the oysters have been eaten every one, if you remember, here there are untouched oysters and heaps of tusks at the end of the poem. And that's kind of a foreboding for the natural order of things and the natural world that haunts many of these poems. And if we are the walrus, as Pete's title suggests, how will we stay on course and tell our stories and look for meaning in the things that are changed or lost? It's really a wonderful poem. Staying on the music theme, a few collections ago, Pete had a book called The Session. And in this new book, towards the end, he has a series of musical poems, or a musical break, as he calls it, beginning with Ghost Session, which is a sort of a recreation of the session from memory in the lockdown. This and all the music poems in the book really resonated with me how lovely they are, set in Galway, where the sessions are only mighty, and Pete's poems flow and dance and riff with the observations of musicians and instruments and the personality of the session itself. It's hard to pick a favorite from this section for me, but maybe because I'm myself am writing at the moment about blind street poets in my research, I was really touched by the beautiful poem about raftery, and I'd like to read just the very beginning and the very end of that poem, just while I'm here. It's called Tuning the Instrument. The hand finds a tree, smooth bark and knot hole, 10 paces to the left, and here is a musical gate, 4 iron notes as it opens. He inhales primrose, daffodils sound a welcome as a winding ribbon of pathway leads up to the big house. That's the beautiful opening of the poem. And at the end, as Raftery gets up to the door, feet on gravel, lift of the heavy door knocker, 3 strikes for luck. Footsteps approach on the other side, a cough, final taste of morning air, a smile arranged, fond greeting prepared. Here is Raftery, strung, finely tuned, ready to play. Isn't that just absolutely gorgeous? All of the book, all parts of the book have lovely poems. There's the second section is called Us and Our Nature, and there's some personal memories here. Swimming with Plato, a wonderful evocation of a first swimming lesson without a pool on an old woman's table, and how a child and a poet's imagination fill in the gaps between expectation and reality. And also Closing the Gap, a poem where the shape of his mother's maiden name on a page conjures overgrowth on a disused road or railway line, forgotten routes winding back to the lands of our mothers. A sense of loss is gently and gorgeously captured here by Pete. Falling for Fruit cleverly ties up the women's kind of fall from grace with fruit, with apples, pomegranate seeds, while men apparently just sit around and wait for the fruit to fall on their heads. There's nostalgic poems. Those nostalgic poems I referred to about the swimming lesson and the mother's maiden name contend with a sort of sense of menace in some of the other poems. In Disturbed and A Future Nature Lover Reflects, they're filled with artificial creations. A creepy drone echoes a red kite, but we're unable to trace back to the hand that controls it. And Pete creates real tangible tension about these dystopian presences in our lives. The last poem I'm going to mention is Don't Always Expect Fireworks, because it's a poetry workshop in a poem. It takes us from the tentative start of a workshop through the humorous and sometimes unsettling asides and questions, and the nub of that exchange of trust between the writer and the participants. And between the Roman candles and the Catherine wheels and the rockets and the jumping jacks, this poem gives us a delightful description of how poetry can surprise us. Forget about the instructions. Reach into the box. Select at random, light the blue touch paper, stand back at a safe distance, a sputtering sss, and then who knows? And who knows indeed? Poetry is unpredictable, it's fiery, it's illuminating, it bursts into the sky, and Pete's poetry is all of this. On the blurb, I think, for a previous book of Pete's, I described him as a troubadour. I hope I have that right. But that is not rounded enough, I think, for Pete. Pete is a kind of showman, but you never know what the show is going to be. One night it might be a circus, where Pete is advocating for the animals, of course. Another night, a carnival with dizzy rides. Another night, a fireworks show. Another night, a session with the best music in town and a few plaintive ballads sung in a pure, clear voice. If you want to experience all these things for the bargain price of a few pints, buy We Are the Walrus. You will not be disappointed. Buy more copies for your friends. Give them to them for Christmas. It's another beautiful production from Salmon, who do such first-rate work in poetry. And now I'm really looking forward to the main event, which is Pete Mullineaux himself reading his fine poems. And I can say, take it away, Pete.
Oh, okay. Oh, Catherine Ann, Uh, oh, I loved everything you said. That was so wonderful. Thank you so much. But you really, really seem to have just touched on all the things I was hoping that, you know, my ideal reader would, you know, be touched by. Sorry, I just been a little bit and it's lovely to see you. And I must say, you know, we're saying we haven't seen each other for a while, but we did read together all those years ago, the first introductions, and we have stayed together in our own way and within the poetry world. And so thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I really, really am knocked out. Okay, I'll digest it all later when I have the time to really think about it. So thank you, big thank you to Catherine Ann for doing the introduction. Thank you so much to Vinny and Maeve there at Charlie Byrne's bookshop for hosting this online session. It's so great to be there in the bookshop, even if it is only virtual. And thank you so much for arranging all those books behind you, Vinny. I chose to have a single walrus on the cover of the book. But it's great when you put them all together like that. Look, a whole bunch of them on the rocks. And we were just saying whether are they walruses or walrusi or whatever the combination term is. Or is there maybe the walruses won't mind anyway, whatever, you know, they didn't choose it. So I just want to continue to thank a few people. So I also want to thank Salmon Poetry, of course, and in particular Siobhan Hudson-Janot, who's done so much work supporting me and working on the cover and working on the inside of the book. And thank you for all your creative input, Siobhan. Thank you to Mike UK for the cover image, the wonderful walrus image. Thank you to Kathleen Fury, who did a beautiful walrus drawing sketch, which is on the inside of the front cover. I want to thank Tony Curtis, Geraldine Mitchell, Adam Wyeth, and Whitney Smith for all the lovely things they said on the back. And then closer to home, I want a huge big thank you to my partner Moya Roddy, fellow writer, for all her support and creative input into my writing life. And a big thank you to our daughter Cass, our lovely daughter Cass, who's going through a bit of a hard time at the moment, health-wise. And I want to send all the positive vibrations that are coming from this reading in her direction. So this for you, Cass. And I want to thank everybody, of course, all the people, family and friends who have come in from all around Ireland and the UK and the US and Canada and France and Germany and Holland and elsewhere, and lots of wonderful places. And so lovely to see you all here this evening. Thank you all so much for coming. So I'll read a few poems. I hope I'm going to do them justice now after Catherine Ann read those poems so beautifully. I'd like you to read the whole book. Can I have it go over, please? But I'll give it a go. Anyway, so Catherine Ann mentioned the music connection, how we're both musicians, and Catherine Ann's a wonderful singer too. And so yes, and during the course of especially the beginning of the lockdown, as a fiddle player and a trad player, I really missed the live sessions. So this first poem is maybe a hangover after Halloween. Maybe there's still a few ghosts around. So I'm going to read Ghost Session. And so we couldn't go and play, but I had this kind of fanciful idea that maybe the instruments were up there in the pub without us getting ready. So, Ghost Session. The instruments are there without us getting ready. Cases open, bellows ease, strings tune. Rosin spreads. Some chit-chat about weather, the match. A bit of world news thrown in. Flute enters, shrugging off the rain gear, bicycle clips. Banjo tries to order drinks. Plink, plink of a coin on an empty glass. A few are warming up fingers, loosened wrists, softened lips, taking off into a genteel O'Carolan set. Maybe a jig or two before letting rip with some high-tempo reels. Each takes a turn starting. Whistle leans towards polkas and slides. Fiddle picks a mazurka. They allow a pause every now and then for singer. The evening repeats more habits and rituals. Bouzouki will check the soccer scores. Mandolin slips out for a smoke. Bowron is bound to come back from the loo saying, "We don't sound too bad from in there." Concertina's quiet tonight, maintaining a distance, squeezing thoughts. The music fills the absence, lanes of tunes taking on new resonance. Last night's fun, happy to meet, sorry to part. My love is in America. There's a call for cueness as a lament is announced, but with no stag parties, darts crowd to compete with, the TV off, there's already silence. Thank you. Thank you. So we're gonna continue with going to the first section of the book, which is nature and us, and this is a kind of ghostly kind of a poem in a way. And these poems, all of these poems are written about encounters I had with various forms of wildlife. And so this one happened in our garden, and it's called Borders. A scuffling in the bushes. I soften my breathing and wait until a perfect Brock face peeks out of the inky dark. A second rough shape untangles itself from a pile of hedge trimmings, a matted hairbrush. Some busy nosing before both melt back into the shadows. I feel honored. Does this mean they'll be staying? Cousins to otter, mink, pine marten, wolverine? I've heard they trample down flowers, will make a golf course of the lawn, rooting for grubs. Perhaps if I learn their language, we can set up a dialogue, find a compromise over rights of way, borders, discover some natural accommodation. Who knows, with all that digging, those squat snouts may yet dig up a poem. And the presence of we filmed the badgers in the garden actually, and I remember Moya said to me, "Shh," as these badgers appeared, and it's a very quiet kind of moment. So in contrast, this next encounter was much noisier. This poem is called Game Pheasant. Turning a bend in the laneway, a kick to my heart, and a sudden commotion. It's like we'd both heard a shot as you rise to the safety of a tree, heaving your bulk like an overburdened helicopter. Another time in the car, I came upon you, but there was no cover. You ran ahead, swerving from side to side, a fugitive trying to shake off a pursuer, distrustful of what should be your natural element. It's fixed in the DNA, terror sounds of grass beaters, rifles bolt loading, gun dogs panting. Funny how a pheasant hunt is called a drive. Some smart aleck people post videos filmed from dash cams of such bird brain behavior, not recognizing a hard-gained survival instinct. Will we get even close to your 20 million years? I hear you sometimes at night, that anguished call announcing yourself in the safety of the dark, saying how you are game, but not game. Oh, foolish pheasant, oh, foolish heart. And I finished that little section with a very small poem actually, but it's, yeah, I think almost everybody I know at the moment is going through some kind of a challenge. Time is precious, and it's something that I think time comes into this collection a lot, and the value of time and how we spend time. So this is called In Praise of Idleness. A bullfinch is perched on the edge of a flower pot, pecking seeds from a dandelion. I could watch all day. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. So that's the end of that section. I'm going to move on to the second section, which is called Us and Our Nature. And there's a kind of more, I suppose, of a kind of an exploration, interrogation of ourselves as human beings. And, you know, Catherine Ann mentioned there's like a lot of ecological themes running through the book. And but also our kind of ambivalence towards nature and ecological issues. And I kind of tried to reflect that in this poem. When you're trying to do the right things, but you're not sure if you are really. It's called Matryoshka. Like those Russian or Chinese dolls, the tiny anchovies tin squeezes into the slightly larger one for sardines. Then that nests cozily inside a lentils can. Finally, this set of three fits neatly into the empty shell of a margarine tub. I stand back, pleased with this small effort towards recycling, waste management, even as I'm thinking about where it will end up, some toxic dump, kicking the cans down the road, as it were. Not to mention, I really should be eating less tin foods. And of course, there's the fish. I was reading too how those dolls have become a metaphor for offshore shell companies. I've washed and rinsed away the salty brine, but the fishy smell lingers. Thoughts inside of thoughts, inside of thoughts, and only my head swimming. I'm just going to connect up that swimming, the swimming motif, if you like, with this next poem, which is called, if I can find it, Swimming with Plato, which again, Catherine Ann mentioned. And this, well, anyway, I'll tell you about it. So it goes, swimming with Plato, this is absolutely true. For my first swimming lesson, I went with my mother to a big house in a different part of the city, climbed several flights of dark stairs, me wondering, where's the pool? Maybe the posh lady opening the door to her apartment, like to high dive, was looking for a young prodigy to teach, like a character from my sister's Bunty comic. Or might there be a descending slide like the one at the public marina? What the elderly woman, now I could see her in the light, did have was a table, across which I was asked to lie, while she took my hands, then my feet, and showed me the frog movements of the breaststroke. We didn't attempt the crawl, and I only went one time. My mother had seen the ad in the paper, gone on a whim. And as the man said, it's the thought that counts. Later on, I learned to swim in the sea like everyone else. But looking back, I realized, despite her limitations, the old woman had whetted my appetite, as well as opening my mind to how a kitchen table could become a pool, a flight of stairs might lead to the high board. How so often we find ourselves making do. There's this next poem is called More, and it takes a cue from that scene in the musical Oliver, where you remember that the children are all in the poorhouse and they're having this awful, disgusting breakfast, some sort of porridgey thing called gruel. And the little boy, Oliver, goes up and he says, "Please, sir, can I have some more?" And the answer, of course, is more. And they all burst into song. They sing "Food, Glorious Food." I was doing a project with some teenagers in a school, and we were exploring the issue of famine and hunger, and maybe hanging around teenagers, it kind of rubbed off on the energy of this particular poem. So this is called More. Chicken wing, onion ring, curry sauce on everything, chip, dip, egg, flip, pumpkin seed and apple pip, meat, sweet, sugar beet. Can you hear the sugar beet in the beet box, cereal box, booze on the rocks in the ice box, iced tea. Wake on up and smell the coffee. Fish, soup, spaghetti hoop, watermelon, cantaloupe, Sunday roast, cheese on toast, feeding hunger coast to coast, deep fry, shepherd's pie, reach up for that pie in the sky. Chocolate muffin, turkey stuffing, shovel it down, can't get enough. Fill the space, fill the gap, fill the void when life feels crap. More, more, more and more, wondering why and what it's for. Feed the rich, starve the poor, then go off and start a war, because some just want more and more. Feed the rich, start the poor, cuts those at top want more and more. Who knows what the hell it's for? Just keep grabbing more and more and more. Well, there's a lot of war. We're suffering a lot of war and a lot of other things, and I suppose as a species, humankind is is finding all kinds of ways to do ourselves in. And thinking back to that, the pheasant poem, 20 million years and not to be sniffed at, and dinosaurs are around for maybe 150 million years, and I think as Homo sapiens in our current incarnation, we're just in the thousands. We could just be gone, and we're just like a little blip in the history of evolution. And so this is this poem again. Catherine Ann referred to this poem. It's called "A Future Nature Lover Reflects." At last, the woods are full of life again. Creepy, crawly things, other delights on the wing, a regular beat, no rain or flood, burning sun or somber Arctic mood will mean the failure of a brood. No threat of a permanent silence. All is improved, more resilient. You can set your time by swallows coming and going, a cuckoo's call. Sad perhaps to think of what was lost, but now and then no harm in overhaul. Artificial, let us say rather artifice. Today, nothing needs to feel the cold. Thrushes sing in the astro snow. A newly sprung robin finds its perch with a steely ping. Sings its hopes, this joyful world embracing. A flash of jay, all of nature present, everything moving to and fro until in the far off future, systems slow, long life batteries will need replacing. And I think I'll finish with a love poem as a contrast to that. And so this poem is for everybody who came tonight. Thank you all for coming. And so whatever this poem is about, plenty of it is coming in your direction. And so it's simply called X. Throw it, plant it, exchange it. A quick peck or a smacker. Lips are essential, tongues optional. Mouth to mouth, the general rule, although cheeks will do. From a distance, you can blow it. Sometimes during it, you might sigh, releasing endorphins, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, adrenaline, wet or dry. Always good for saying goodbye. Sealing a promise, a mark of tenderness on the forehead. Other times it's just for show. Kiss, kiss, or once a year under the mistletoe. Best slow. A few you'll never forget. Rodin sculpted, Klimt painted. But enough of this. The pucker muscle is orbicularis oris. Rhymes with bliss. And a big kiss to everybody and hugs. Thank you all for coming so much. I'm going to pass you back to Vinny.
Thank you, Pete, for that lovely beautiful rendering of those poems, the first time we've had a chance to hear them. And thanks to Catherine Ann Cullen for a lovely, warm, and very literate look at the poems. And yeah, I think we can say definitively that the book, We Are the Walrus, is now launched with the lovely dedication that Pete has put in the book: for all creatures, great and small. So it is our pleasure to have been handmaiden in some small way to the launch of We Are the Walrus, Pete Mullineaux. Now, I would like to just let you know that we have this up on our website now. So anybody who is not near enough to come to the shop and buy the book can do so on our website, which is www.charliebyrne.ie. So you'll find Pete's book there, and we will get it to you in Ireland the following day and further afield a little bit longer. But thanks once again to Pete Mullineaux and to Catherine Ann Cullen, and thanks to yourselves for joining us here this evening. And hopefully we will see you in the shop before too long. And hopefully, Pete, we will see you on the stage before too long, performing these poems in person and in public. But meanwhile, from us here in Charlie Byrne's, and from Pete and from Catherine, a very good night and a very nice rest of the evening to you all.